There is blind justice, and then there is trading justice, so that you can finally afford to get that laser eye surgery. Not only will people find you more attractive once you ditch those old glasses, you'll be able to see your charts better. That's what we call win-win. Speaking of winning, it's time for a little trading justice, brought to you by TackleTrading.com.
Okay, hello everybody out there. Good to be back. This is Tim Justice with the Trading Justice podcast. We've got producer Phil here, and we have a special guest. His name is Tim Cooley, and I think it's more appropriate, Phil, for maybe you to introduce Tim. He's a friend of yours, and invite a guest to the podcast. I'm excited to talk to Tim, but tell us a little bit about Tim and introduce him proper.
Surely. Well, I met Tim Cooley through the Board Game Designers Guild of Utah, a board game designing group here in Salt Lake City, and we were playtesting Gears, I believe is the name of the game, and I was part of a group called the Foundry. I still am, but I was super active at the time, and that is a business accelerator up at the University of Utah, and every week I went to the Game Design Guild. I would just preach it at the top of my lungs that the Foundry was this amazing thing. Your game design will get better. It'll be more organized, because there were some people that were having trouble staying motivated or keeping track of progress, that kind of thing. And if you're thinking of starting a business, that's even better, because my previous company would not have existed at all had it not been for the Foundry. So Tim Cooley was the only one to listen to me, and he went to the Foundry and checked it out, and he looked around and went, yeah, I know what's going on here. I'm down with this action. And then ended up going through the program. So we have those two things in common, and he can vouch for how awesome the Foundry actually is. And that's pretty well it. I also helped introduce him to their current artist for his business of Random Breakfast, which is a health app company. I introduced him to Elior Nelson, who is rocking out their artwork for their game. So, Tim Cooley, how are you this morning?
Good, thanks for having me. Yeah, like Phil said, I mean, we've kind of had like a weird history, but yeah, we did meet through playing board games and testing them, and then did the business stuff.
One of my mentors actually believes in educating people through games. I don't know if you guys know who Robert Kiyosaki is. He wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the financial motivational book back in, I think he probably wrote that in the early 90s. I'd have to look up the exact date. I didn't read it until, I got out of college, actually, in like 2007 when I met Robert. And he has a game they call the cash flow game. So you guys have a background in gaming, and it sounds like board games are part of what you enjoy to do as well, Tim, looking at some of your history. You can talk about that in a minute. But let me ask you guys, what kind of lessons and life lessons do you think that we can learn just through the playing of board games, card games, video games, whatever it might be? Let's start with you, Tim.
So I think one of the interesting things that people don't realize about games is one of the key components is failure. Like, so you have to fail, right? Like, if the game is, something that you can always win at, it's not fun. And I think, it's really mathematical in how do you create this environment where failure keeps you coming back. And just what I've done in my business life, you just keep coming back, right? And I think I actually read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that's one of the reasons why I tried to start my first business. So I was like, I think I can do something with the knowledge that I have, and it's just been that learning process. And I think I'm really involved in gamification of other things like, health and, board games as well. But I think for me, one of the big things was this idea of, how do you develop a system where failure is fun, and so to get you to come back and try and overcome that failure.
I think that it takes a couple of components. Number one, the failure can't be devastating, right? It can't be overwhelming. It can't be constant. Right. If you play a video game where literally you can't ever get past the first level, eventually you're going to just turn that off and find a different game, correct? Yeah. Exactly. So you have to, it has to be enough of a challenge, but not too much pushback. I think we have that. I don't know if Phil has taught you much about what we do over at Tackle Trading, but we teach new investors how to deal with the stock market, and they have challenges, from the get-go. Software use and learning how to identify when to make decisions and understand terms. And so there are going to be constant failures. I think the idea of working through game theory and also understanding, just the nature that you're going to have successes and failures is probably a very important lesson to learn. Tim, did you also have a game company like Phil did?
I did not. So I actually, I went into a board game store here, and there was this game, and I was like, I can do a better job than that. And so I started building my game, and I think I met Phil way early on, and I was like, hey, I need some dice to build this game, and he was like, you should come to this thing. And so that's how I got into it. I actually never wanted to sell my game. I just wanted to build it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, tell me about your game.
So the board game that I built is kind of like Capture the Flag. You have a team, and your goal is to get kind of like a chess in a way, trying to get I call it your general, but you try to get him to the middle of the board. It's got some pretty cool mechanics in it, but you're just moving around. You could win the game in 7 moves, but it usually takes about an hour to make that happen. Mm-hmm. Like a real-time strategy.
Very interesting. And Phil, were you the one who helped working on the design of that in terms of getting it to the right artist for the art and everything? What role did you play in this?
I didn't realize that I was already working at Game Night at the time. I was working at the game store that he mentioned, and it was still a very active part of the store's schedule. And so myself and the main manager of the store, whenever someone came in looking for dice or game components or asking game design questions, because it was a board game store, we went, hey, you should come by and check out this awesome thing. And we got a fair number of converts there. And beyond that, I helped playtest a little bit, but for gears, not too much beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Well, I mean, I love the idea of creating something, whether it's a game or whether you're writing a book or we create the podcast. I mean, whatever it is, when you take something you have, intellectual property, and you put that idea into motion and you follow through with it, it's not always going to turn into a billion-dollar idea. It doesn't have to for it to help you grow as a person. So I want to congratulate you for seeing that through, Tim, and starting to get that game going and up and running. What other things are you working on right now in your own life, in terms of business and entrepreneurialism? I know with the background in the Foundry, your mind is probably constantly working. I'll tell you how I know a little bit more about the Foundry in a minute, but what do you got in the pipeline right now? What are you working on?
Yeah, so I recently graduated from the U's MBA program, and I focused a lot on innovation, especially in healthcare. So I have a master's in sports medicine, and then over the course of my studies, I got really involved in taking the things that I learned from designing games, and then really applying those to health. And how do we get people to start changing behaviors? And so I created a company called Random Breakfast, and we're launching a game called Step Pet. And so Step Pet is actually it's just a normal game, but it's enhanced by physical activity of walking. So in this game, if you want new pets, you have to actually reach your step goals in order to get them. If you want the levels to be easier, you just have to get up and walk around, and the whole game becomes easier. And then I don't know if you guys track your steps or not, but if you do, you have these natural ebbs and flows of data, basically. And so we actually take that data and turn it into a level. So you're kind of playing your life in a way. And then you get to cash in on something that you want if you go out and, exercise. So that's kind of what we're working on, is how do we, go outside of just this typical, app tracking and give you a badge and actually give you something that, you might want instead of something you're like, well, I have 50 badges and they don't do anything for me. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So do you use software for your phone, or is it like one of those Fitbit watches? I mean, what's the plan with the interface?
Yeah, so we're building the game in Unity, so it can be on Android and iOS. And our goal is to link it through Fitbits and stuff, but if you just have any phone, it should, theoretically work on any phone. You might have to download an app or two to, for example, if you have an Apple phone and you're already running HealthKit, it just links through the HealthKit system.
Ooh, API is sexy.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, I love the idea. I mean, clearly it's something that you sat down, you thought about this, and you're trying to do something that's going to be positive for people. Talk about steps a little bit. My wife tracks her steps. I am a big believer in getting as many steps in as I can during a day. I think I do walk a lot. People who know me and have ever been to my office in Salt Lake know that I like to walk around the block every couple hours. What is the recommended number of steps for a person out there every day? And talk a little bit about what that is important for, Tim.
Yeah, so there's a study done in Japan, and the recommendation came out to be about 10,000 steps per day. If you're a little bit older, and like some health conditions, for example, arthritis, they recommend right around 6,000. I believe like just walking, right? I mean, the hardest thing about going to the gym is going to the gym. So, I mean, one step is better than zero. But yeah, I'm a huge walker. I like to do what's called urban hiking. I did like 13 miles the other day. But yeah, so like 10,000 steps is about 5 miles. So it's not too far. If you space it out throughout the day, but if you go for a little 5-mile jaunt, it feels far, but it's not.
And I'll tell you, I think it's just little things in your life that if you changed your habit around it, you would start seeing your steps come up. First thing is measuring it. I've noticed this with my wife quite a bit. We got her, I don't think she has a Fitbit. I think it's a different brand. I can't remember what it is. But she now because it's measuring it on her watch, she knows more, she's more aware, and it's kind of like you have to keep records. I see this in my students with their trading. You have to keep score, and this goes back to game theory as well. When you start to keep score, people become more aware of it, they become more competitive, they want to hit their goals, that kind of thing. In my neighborhood, about 3 or 4 blocks over is where my kids go to school. And I can't count the number of parents who, instead of spending the 10 minutes to walk to school with their kids, they get in a car, they drive over, they wait in this long car line just to drop the kids off when they easily could just walk. When I'm downtown, walking over to lunch instead of getting in the car and driving to lunch. There's so many different opportunities. It's small things in your life where you could get some steps in and you can become more active. And essentially, it's going to help your health quite a bit. Little things. You got to stay moving, people. Tim, have you heard of this thing about standing desks as well, where instead of sitting down, you're supposed to stand up and do? Have you looked into anything like that? Do you do that?
I do that, actually. I love it. You got to get proportions right and get your screen right in front of your face, or else it hurts your neck a little bit. But I mean, I put mine in once we got our office space about 3 months ago, and I will never have a sitting desk again. It's awesome. Yeah. I mean, you gotta get one of those taller chairs and stuff, but it's awesome.
Sure. Yeah, I have both. I have a few desks in my house where I'll sit down, and I got to tell you, I notice a huge difference in my energy levels for the day. I'm more lethargic when I'm sitting down. I notice a huge difference in my productivity. When you stand and you're active and you're moving around, even just the act of being up and having to fidget a little bit and move around, it keeps you sharp. And I love my standing, workspaces. I have one in my garage, and even in my office downtown, I'll stand and work there. I need to build another one for down in my basement, but I know there's a lot of companies that produce that kind of thing, but I actually like to kind of just build my spaces and kind of work with there. But it's something I would definitely recommend everybody.
With boxes.
Yeah, just kind of do some boxes. Yeah, if you're a do-it-yourselfer out there, Pinterest, just Pinterest standing desks, and you'll find a lot of really cool little projects you could try. There's a lot of simple things you can do. Phil, what about you? Do you use a standing desk?
I do not, but it is one of the very few things I miss about working at Verizon Wireless is they have desks that can convert to standing desks. There's a little lever underneath it, so you can stand and get the blood circulating as you guys are talking about. I would absolutely love to have one. Carrie would too, the girlfriend, and she's been rallying to try and get one at work for herself. And because they're slowly going around her office installing them for select people, since they have some regulations the company has to follow or something, so they have to clear paperwork and all that nonsense. But yeah, you guys nailed it on the head. You get a little logy, especially around 2 to 3 p.m. when your circadian rhythm kind of drops off. That it's like, no, stand, move the legs a little bit while talking to people or being yelled at, in my case, since I was Verizon customer service. So,
Well, there's so many different things. I don't know if you guys have heard the phrase, sitting is the new smoking. Like, I've literally read some studies where they say, like, sitting down all day is terrible for your body. And, even just these little things in your life. I think a lot of people think that to get active and to get healthier, you've got to hit the gym 5 days a week. You got to do P90X and get all ripped. And I don't believe that. I actually think that I feel best even in my life just when I'm moving around, when I'm using a standing workstation, when I'm moving around through the city and out and about and doing stuff and, and getting my 10,000 steps in. I love the concept of the game, Tim. I'm going to have to get some version of it. Is there anywhere you can get it yet? Is it released or is it still in production?
So it's still in production, but we are taking signups on our website, which is steppetsgame.com. So, but I'll send you an early version of it. So we love testers. We want people just to test it and give us feedback. One of the things we learned through the Foundry and through the Game Designers Guild was, play testing is huge. We just love feedback. But yeah,
That's
I'll get
great.
it to you.
Definitely. Another part of your background is the Foundry. And Phil and I have talked about this on previous podcasts. Actually, the reason I know Phil is because I was friends and still am friends with another member of the Foundry. Travis, I won't drop his full name in case he doesn't want me to, but you probably know him. And I knew him from when he was a young man, 20, 19 years old, maybe even just right out of high school. And I saw his personal growth and development really changed when he got involved with that group. This is one of the examples, I think, of where traditional education gets it right. They don't always get it right. I think that there's a lot of things that they don't really produce really creative people in certain fields or certain departments, but I love the Foundry. Kind of explain to our audience out there what the Foundry is and what your experience was with it.
Yeah, so the Foundry is basically a cohort of business owners who get together on a weekly basis. There are some structured formats of, kind of paperwork and plans that they ask you to fill out. And then what happens is on these, we met on, I think it was Mondays. I don't remember. But anyways, you would come to them and you basically would talk about just the problems you were having trying to accomplish something. So let's say, for example, this week I needed to build a website, and I'm like, hey, I don't know anybody who's a web developer. And so you would bring this problem to the Foundry group, and I would say 9 times out of 10, somebody in there knew somebody. If they couldn't do it, then they would connect you with somebody who could help you with this problem. And it just really accelerated the growth of your company because you had, basically 10, 12 people who were interested in seeing you succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And these are real people in the field out there. I mean, this is one thing I love about this is when you're a student. I remember pre-law political science. They made me go down to the courthouse one semester and watch a few court cases. That was about it. We had some moot court demonstration thing. Matt, my brother, went through law school. I don't even think that you did a lot of interacting with lawyers when you were in law school. I think that too many fields, they don't actually get you out there to do the thing you're going to do very, very well or very efficiently. And the Foundry allows you to network with other actual business owners. These are people that are running businesses in your community that can help you with your mindset. And that's a catchphrase that you hear a lot, mindset. Talk about the development of your mindset, going from a student, starting to network, starting to see how other people interact with businesses. Now you started your own with your game app company. What was that journey like for you, and how important was it to have the connections you did at the Foundry?
Yeah, so I actually did the Foundry before I was a student, and it was one of the influential factors of me going back and getting my master's. I was like, there's so much knowledge in this room, and I don't have it. Like, I won't be nearly as successful as these people because I just don't know. And so I went back to school because of, that was one of the main reasons, was because of this interaction. And so, I realized through that process how important, just being a business owner or, wanting to be involved in business in any way, it was so network driven. I mean, like I'm talking with you because I met Phil a long time ago, and I still have connections through my Foundry group that, we meet, maybe on a monthly basis. And that was 4 years ago or something. And so, I just, like, for me, it was like, okay, this is really cool. I didn't know this stuff, but, like, being able to see how people have grown and, what challenges they have in their business, you're like, you know what, I can actually be a resource to you. Even though I don't know anything about your industry, but, like, I just met this guy on the airplane, and, like, let me connect you with that guy. And I think, going through that Foundry, like, I just witnessed that happen on a weekly basis. And so for me, just changing the mindset, I was like, I want to be that person who's constantly looking for opportunities to help other people. Because if it wasn't for, all the people who have, kind of like risked their own name, and for me, like, I wouldn't be anywhere.
Yeah, and we're talking to Tim Cooley here. He is the CEO of Random Breakfast, a game app company. Earlier, we were talking about that game app that you're releasing out in November, which I think is amazing. The concept and the idea behind it, combining games with physical activity, your background in sports medicine and business. With your experience starting this new company, because I have a lot of entrepreneurs out there listening to our podcast in trading, business, whatever it is. What advice would you give a new entrepreneur that's never started their own company before? What steps do they need to take in improving their mindset or networking, like you just mentioned? What would you tell those people?
I would say do it. There are so many things that, like, we're afraid to do, and selling is one. I'm not a salesperson, but, like, every business is a sales role, and so, like, that was something that I had to realize, right? Like I can sell something, whether it's a T-shirt or whatever, I learned a lot just by doing it. Like, for example, like with the board game that I first created, I was like, I can do that, and I did, and I think that's something that I think entrepreneurs are like, well, I have to build this huge enterprise thing, and you're like, actually, you can sell lemonade. Like, that could be your first venture. And then, like, reinvest, like, I'm sure you guys talk a lot about, how you just do something, try it, like, it doesn't hurt to try something.
Yeah, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. And I even believe networking is one of the most important skills. You can be an introvert and be wildly successful, I'm sure. But at some level, we need to learn from other people, interact with other people, learn from their mistakes, their successes, their mindset, whatever it is, and to grow our business. Sales is a tricky thing because I think when some people hear the word sales, they think they have negative reactions to that word. And it may be their background, it might be their mindset, but at the end of the day, we are selling ourselves at all times. I mean, Tim, you're literally, whether we know it or not, you're marketing yourself and your app while we're on this podcast, right? You're pushing it out there and you're proud of it. What is your, relationship with selling now? Are you going to be out there pitching the app to companies to put it on? Do you have to sell it to the broad public? Do you have to come up with a marketing campaign? What are the next steps for getting this app out there into the public eye?
Yeah, so I have a background also in online marketing, and so we're going to do a lot of what's called content marketing, trying to reach out to influencers to talk about what we're doing. I think it's a pretty cool viral concept, people just want to be healthy and they also want to play games, so let's combine those two. But the other thing that we're doing is trying to, from a sales side, is really reach out to wellness companies. So, Walgreens, United Health, these big insurance companies who want this data from people, this, the step tracking and, are you being healthy stuff. And so we're trying to reach out to them to do some kind of, partnerships with what we're trying to accomplish. And what they're trying to accomplish, and just combining the two opportunities. And that's been challenging because, like I said, I never looked at myself as a salesperson, but like you mentioned, we're always selling. And I think the difference there is I actually love what I'm doing, so it's so much easier just to talk about it, and it's not like I don't have to force it on you, which I feel like we feel like in some sales roles, like I have to force this project on you or this product. But when you like it, you're like, I'm not selling it to you. I'm just telling you about what I'm doing and how it can help you.
Yeah, I think it's one of the keys to life and business is find something you're passionate about. I deal with this all the time in trading because I'll bring a new student in, and the financial markets are so vast and big that there are niches. There's so many different things you can do, and one of the first challenges any new trader has is to find their why. What do I want to do and why? What do I want to focus on? What do I want to master? What do I want to perfect? Is it commodities trading, or is it just to protect my retirement or to be more in control? The first step is just education and then practice, application, but then at some level you've always got to find that why. If you do something you're passionate about, you're much more likely to succeed. You're much more likely to follow through, and you're much more likely to make that thing great. Seems like this is the perfect combination for you because it allows you to work with technology, work with an application, and work in health and management. So I like it. Very, very cool. Is the long-term goal with your company to continually design new games, new apps? What's the vision of Random Breakfast?
So I think, I love your idea of starting with why. Simon Sinek, that's one of his big things, and I've watched his TED Talk probably 50 times because it just gets me inspired. But the future of Random Breakfast is we want to be a game development company for a while, and hopefully we create a new industry. That would be really cool. But we also just want to listen to what the market's telling us and be agile enough to keep changing with with whatever's out there. I don't think 10 years from now we'll be a game company, but if we are, that's great. Maybe with part of other opportunities that we're working on too. But like I was telling one of my co-founders the other day, I was like, I think if we just keep listening, the industry or the market will guide us where we need to be. And I think this is just a starting point for us as founders. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Now, was I reading it right? The bio Phil sent over to me. Do you have a background in the
military? I was in the Marine Corps for 5 years.
Wow. And how long ago was that? And what was that
experience It was like? Great. So I was in from 1999 to 2004. I was a C-130 jet engine mechanic. And it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. The guys I worked with are amazing, and I still keep in contact with them. And I think it was crazy because I actually went in for a different role, and they changed it on me the day before it started. And I was like, well, I'm here, so I didn't care. But what was really interesting is I never worked on any motors growing up. I think I changed a tire once. And I think through that process, not only does it give you, the structure and passion and care for other people, because you get this team environment and we accomplish something, and we do these things. But I think it really taught me that I can do pretty much anything. I learned the engine inside and out, and it was so different from what I'd been doing before. And I was like, this is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had a lot of students that had military backgrounds. Obviously, I've taught thousands of people, so you get kind of every different background. One thing I always find interesting about somebody who'd had military training is their willingness to follow instruction. It's very powerful, but also to follow rules, step-by-step methodical rules, because I think part of your training there and the life there, you have to do that. And another one is teamwork. I have a lot of friends that served in the 222. When I went to school in Cedar City, there are a lot of people that ended up enrolling in the National Guard, and that's the division down there in southern Utah, the 222, they call it, Triple Deuce. And many of them served tours in Afghanistan. I have one friend who actually did 2 tours in Afghanistan, and they're comrades, they're buddies. It's nothing like my friendship, I can tell you that, because they were actually, in the stuff together, and that's a different level, isn't it? So you keep track of everybody. What skills did you learn from going through your military training do you think that you're using in business now?
Teamwork is huge. I started my first business back in 2010 or something like that, and I just didn't have a team. So everything was on me, and it didn't work. And then this time, around, I have 4 people that are including myself, that are just eager to accomplish something. And I think through the military experience, one, you set goals all the time, and then you accomplish them. And depending on written or unwritten, everyone has the same objective, and you're all willing to go out of your comfort zone to accomplish it. And I think like that's something that, you know, since I've been out for quite some time, but I don't think people like have that same, not in general, people don't have that same drive to accomplish something. And that took a long time for me to like be like, oh wow, okay, so let me pull back the reins a little bit because I just want to finish it. Like, let's just go. But I think like, you know, just keeping in contact with the guys that I, you know, was in the Marine Corps with, like, I think that a lot of them still have that same drive to just like, I have this idea, or, you know, I'm working for this company and they need this, and I'm just going to crush it until it's done and it's good, you know? And that's just like, I think that was one of the mindsets that we had, like, especially in jets. I mean, the margin for error was so little that, you know, we had people's lives in our hands that we never met. And one time I actually built an engine and flew on the plane that I built. I mean, that's a scary feeling, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, that is a scary feeling. Yeah, that's funny. Every time, not only on a plane, which I get anxiety on still, even as a 35-year-old adult. Yeah, I've flown a bunch, but I still get anxiety. I always hoped that the engineers were double checking and they had other people double checking and all that kind of thing. But even on like a roller coaster, I always have that random thought go through my mind. Is I wonder who the engineer was that tested the safety on this, right? You know, I hope that they did their job. So you built an engine, then you flew on that plane. You were the pilot, or you just were a passenger?
I was just a passenger. But yeah, that's the worst, because you're like, man, I hope I did my job right. You know, like, you never think about it until your life is in your own hands in a lot of ways, you know? Yeah. We made it, obviously. But,
Bill, you got anything for Tim?
In terms of questions, what have you, actually, let me get this pulled up here. More on
Bill, you fail. I toss you a softball. You're supposed to have a question ready, right?
Yes.
And I pop, 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 pop.
Pop, pop, pop. Yeah, I'm not used to being the co-host. I cracked under the pressure. With your master's in sports medicine, Tim, Cooley, unless Tim Justice has a master's in sports medicine too. What was the motivation behind that, or behind that particular degree, and did you end up doing anything with it, specifically that?
Yeah. So I had my undergrad in athletic training, and athletic training is an interesting field. You know, you work with athletes. I worked with the 49ers at a point, and then I worked with, you know, college level people too. But when you wanted to work in the professionals, they required a master's degree. And so it was just a natural progression. I ended up getting it at the University of Utah, and it was a great experience. I worked with the swimming and diving team. But I found out, like, I just didn't enjoy it anymore. I loved the knowledge that I gained, but I didn't enjoy, like, the work from it. But yeah, so once I graduated, I actually have never done it since.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I have a cousin who's kind of going through that exact thing too. I have this particular degree in the arts, and I have a job doing the arts. I don't like this, actually. What do I do now? Caused some stress for her, because it was a little bit of an existential crisis spending 4 years.
Well, I think I've seen a lot of people, you know, in school have the same problem. They, you know, they get this degree in something, and they're like, I just don't love this, you know, and you're like, I get you. Like, follow your dream, you know, whatever that may be, like, go for that.
Well, I would love the statistics on this. Maybe we could even look it up as we go. But I don't think a lot of people use the degree they were trained in their job, in their career. I mean, how many lawyers do you know never actually became lawyers? How many people that just got some sociology degree or political science degree like myself? It's not like I'm, you know, sitting there writing political theory. I think history, so many of the social sciences, I think they teach you how to just think correctly, and if you can learn critical thinking, or if you can learn process, you can take that and you can apply it to something else. Art is probably a difficult one to make money in. I have a friend, he's a sculptor. I happen to think he's pretty talented. I know he works hard at it, but when you're new and you're a new artist, there's like no money. To get that up off the ground, I think it's a very, very difficult thing. And Phil, you had mentioned existential crisis. I don't know if it's an existential crisis, but more just like a kick in the nuts. It's like, wow, I just spent 4 years and 60 grand or 100 grand or 150 grand to get educated in this area, and now you're telling me I can't even work in my field? That's got to be tough. That's got to be tough when you first get out of school. But I honestly believe this is why we need to change the educational system. I was talking about the Foundry earlier, and I do like what the Foundry does in traditional education, but so much of higher education is a lie sold to kids. Go to school, get a degree, you'll get a job. We all know that's not true. You have to take that and you have to go a lot of times do something very different from what you thought your plan was going to be. The people that you guys went to school with, how many of them have followed through and started businesses?
So in my program, there was 53 people or something, like 58, maybe somewhere around there. And there are 3 that have, there's like 5 who've started businesses, but there's 1 who's raised capital, 1 who's actually, he's building his dream business by the end of the year, and then myself who's working on it, but everyone else either went and got employed by somebody else. So there's only 3 people from my class who have started their own idea and have kind of executed on that.
And it's not a bad thing. I think that 20-somethings and 30-somethings can be too hard on themselves. I've been around as an educator, trader. I deal with money. I deal with people learning how to take control of their money. And quite frankly, most really wealthy people, they position themselves to take off in their 40s and 50s. I use this example all the time. Warren Buffett made 99% of his money after the age of 51. By the time you get to the point where you have the network, the contacts, the experience, the life experience, you may not be 22 years old. So when you're a new entrepreneur, you're going to have some failure at times. It goes back to game theory, right? If you think of life as a game, and we're going to have to be willing to get out there and put ourselves at risk at times, it's okay to start a business and have that one not work forever. I've started businesses that failed. I've tried things that failed. I think every successful person I know has done that, and sometimes many, 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 many times. We have to learn from those experiences, right? Phil, you're a good example of that. You had a business you had to go through bankruptcy on, correct? But that's not going to prevent you from starting another one, is it?
No, it is not. I already want to get back into it, of new ideas, new things. The wounds heal surprisingly quickly. Let's see, May, June, July, August. It's been less than 6 months as of this podcast, and it's like, okay, I'm ready for the new big thing. What's it going to be? So even failing hard, it's just once you have the right mindset, as trite as that sounds, it's true. Once you have the right mindset, it's like, well, that didn't work. What are we going to try next?
Yeah. No, I don't think it. I mean, there couldn't be a truer thing you could say. Mindset is not trite. Mindset is everything to me. In business, in life, you have to wake up and you have to have that mindset in place for you to push yourself through the hard times. I think a lot of people, they don't identify themselves as an entrepreneur, or they don't believe fully in what they're doing yet, and they need to find that why. Tim, you had mentioned some TED Talk. Who was it that you dropped a name, but it happened pretty quick. Who was it that you said did the TED Talk on why?
It's Simon Sinek.
Simon Sinek. Phil, if you can find that TED Talk, let's link that into the podcast possibly. I think that would be or into the description on our podcast. That'd be a good one to go back and watch. Too many examples that I have in my life where People have to know why they're doing this, and it's a reminder. I just had a class this morning. I was the teacher. I had 6 new beginning traders in the class. And after about 10 minutes in the class, half-ass answers, and they didn't really have a good idea of what they were doing, I kind of went off on them. And I said, listen, guys, I'm the kind of teacher that I will point out problems, but I'll also give you solutions. I believe in that. So I'm going to be hard on you for a minute, but I'm going to call you out. You decided within the last 6 months that you wanted to become educated. You decided you needed to get better control of your retirement, that you needed to become more aware of what's happening in the economy, and you're not doing it. So we need to go back to the drawing board and figure out why. Because within the next 2 or 3 months, there's going to be a Federal Reserve interest rate hike. The IMF is meeting to decide on future currency policy regarding the U.S. dollar. The U.S. stock market's been going up for 7 years and now sideways for 8 months, and that's a change in momentum. There's a lot of very serious things happening in the economy that you decided you needed to become better trained at dealing with, and you're not doing it. Why? What we did, Tim, is we listed out all of the things that you need, all of the skill sets you need to be a successful trader. And we tried to pinpoint which areas people were struggling with. And then we came up with solutions on how they were going to fix it in short term. And Matt probably saw my tweet. That's where I tweeted out kind of a little bit of a mini rant where I said, guys, in fact, I should probably read this. It was something like, I can't even remember my own tweet from an hour ago. That's how old I'm getting, Phil. It's better to be outstanding at something than average at a lot of things. Focus, people. I think that we need to always look at whatever area of life we're trying to develop, whether it's a business or a skill set, or we're trying to get better at our health, or we need to lose some weight, or we need to become more active, and try to solve a few things at a time. People get overwhelmed, and it's like drinking from a fire hose when we have too many things that we're working on. In business, it's that way. How many times have you had a corporate meeting where everybody's got 18 projects they're trying to get done, but nobody's gotten anything done? So
true. I mean, I'm not to add to what you're saying.
Right.
I think that one of the things we talk about is focus a lot. Like, what's your priority, right? Like, if health is your priority, then that's going to be the first thing that you're going to do today. Or no, maybe not today, but you're going to go out of your way to do that because it's a priority. And if it's not, then something else is a priority. And we change that priority level, so often throughout the day. And I think, that's something you're talking about your wife and steps, and, you just think about these things, constantly. And you've got all these things that you want to do, but then once it becomes a priority, you will always do it. And I think that's something I work on that on a daily basis, how do I change my priorities so that I can stay focused. If I don't do anything else today, what's that one thing that, if it is a real, true priority, I'm going to accomplish it?
I like that. I like that a lot. Progress is a very powerful thing. You don't go from 40 pounds overweight down to in shape in a day. I can promise you that. And I am a great example of that. I need to lose a few lbs myself. And I think part of that is traveling and eating not at the right time of day and not the right kind of food. And so one thing I've been trying to do just the last few days, Tim, and this was random, but I've been trying to get steps in. I believe that if you're active, I know for a fact in my own life, when I'm active and moving around, I am in much better energy. I have much better energy, and I'm in much better shape. So even just a simple try to change this week in a more positive way. I've been trying to walk. I took the dogs around the block the other day. I took the kids on a bike ride, and I think if I can just move around, that's going to get my energy back up, and then maybe I start to eat a little bit better. It is incremental progress, not just in, that's always the cliched example, health, but health is critical in life. But even in business, incremental progress. I got to tell you one story. I work with a few traders developing content. And recently, in fact, one of our frequent guests on our podcast, his name is Steve Wong. He's a colleague and a friend and a student of mine. And I helped him build his video series we call Theta Fade. And we did it took a long time, and really it was a weekly touch point where we said, okay, Steve, what are you going to work on this week? And we worked on it, and we worked on it, we worked on it. And I've started that process again with another trader developing his book, and I'm helping him design his content and all that kind of stuff. whenever you have to bring something from the conceptual phase to an actual finished product, it just takes baby steps, progress, little things at a time. Oh, this has been fun, Tim. How long do we got you? Do you got to go?
No, I've got
I
as
think
long
we've
as you
been on
need.
about 50 minutes. We usually like to go about an hour. Phil, I want to bring you back in here for a minute. You've been working with a lot of our new traders, and you've seen some of the more active ones, and I believe trading is just like starting a business. What have you seen from the more active, better students that maybe other newer traders could use as a positive example?
Well, the big thing is keeping themselves motivated. However they do that for themselves. But whenever they tend to be, for the new traders that I'll be talking about, they tend to be very active over at Tackle Trading. They're in the clubhouse, they're at the coaches' shows, and they're just always there, and they are engaged. So whatever they are doing for themselves to get motivated, it's working. But that motivation is key. Being engaged as well, even if it takes a little effort, even if you're an introvert, even just writing a couple of forum posts is, even if that's like draining, and I know a few introverts that even typing an email to somebody they've known a long time can be draining. It makes a difference. It keeps you in what you're trying to do. And practice is a huge one. Much like playtesting your game with Step Pets, Cooley, these traders have paper accounts, and they're back testing their strategies, and they're doing it again and again and again for a particular strategy, and they're doing it for weeks and months on end. Steve Wong, with his particular strategy, he tested that thing for over 3 years, and the results speak for themselves on that, with the success he's had, and the just how prepared he was. And as you're practicing, if you for you traders out there who are still, I'll get a paper account set up eventually, I'll get it once I'm ready. No, set it up today, even if it's just writing down 5 stocks and tracking the fundamentals over the course of a few weeks before setting up an actual virtual account through Mock Trader or what have you. Just tracking it and building that habit of checking it every day or every couple of days if it's one that's like a more mellow long-term thing. It makes a difference. It changes how you think for the better. So you will be ready for when you do go live of, this is money's on the line, I have skin in the game, I really need to buckle down, but I already know kind of what to expect because I've been practicing.
Yeah, and I don't pretend to know what it's like to be a true introvert. I do like my private space sometimes. I like to veg out in my what they call man cave down here in the basement. I like to be alone at times, but I'm not an introvert. I'm definitely not. I'm very social, so I don't know what that's like, and I know it's real. But I've noticed a direct correlation between participation and team building and success. Okay, when you're new at something, you have to have people on your team in terms of giving you feedback, interaction. You pick their brain, you ask questions. It could be in a webinar, it could be at the coaches show, it could be at a meetup event where you go down and you just kind of meet at the game store and you actually play. That's one thing I do love about gaming, is that people who are gamers, especially board gamers and card players, they actually like to get together and be social. I think it's one thing that we're missing in society right now with all of this technology. I remember when Matt and I were kids, we didn't always have cable TV. And after Sunday dinner, we'd play a board game. That's what we did. We had a big family. We'd play Monopoly. We'd play Risk. Mom banned Risk a few times. We eventually got Axis and Allies. We loved military strategy. We loved that kind of stuff. Or we'd even just play cards, a game of hearts or spades. Or we had this game we called 500. I really think that one thing I love about games and actual physical games is it forces you to be active. And I try to play games with my kids, whether they're young, so Skip Bo or, even anything. Yahtzee, they love Yahtzee. So I agree, Phil. There's a direct correlation between participation and success. And you have to get in there and engage with the market. You have to practice. If you're not putting trades on regularly and you're not asking for feedback from mentors, coaches, fellow traders, whatever, you're not doing a good enough job, okay? The people who fall off and lose momentum, they're going to use excuses. And I can't tell you the number of times I've heard this excuse. I'm just so busy. Guess what? Everybody's busy. Everybody is busy. I had a professor in college. I remember, I'll never forget this, okay? I took a class as a senior in college, and the only thing I had to do was read these books. There were 25 books, I think, on the list. There was no class time. I didn't have to show up. I just had to read them. And at the end of the semester, and this was a guy who was a friend of mine as well as a professor and kind of a mentor at that time in my life. And if I read these books, I got an A, and that was it. I go into the class. I go into his office at the end of the semester, and we're going through them. And it was political philosophy. We talked about Plato. We talked about all of these different authors. I talked about Hobbes and Locke, and I think there was even just some regular philosophers like Descartes in there and that kind of thing. And we went through them. John Stuart Mill, and on and on and on and on and on. I'm not going to keep name dropping, but there was one I didn't read. I had 24 out of the 25, and it was St. Thomas Aquinas. And I'd read like the first chapter or something, and he asked me about the book. He says, and I told him, I read the excerpt, and man, that guy was such an idiot. I didn't like what he had to say. I knew what he already said. I've been in philosophy forever, in political philosophy. And he looked at me and he said, Tim, and this is a friend of mine. I play golf with him, all that kind of stuff. We're usually buddy-buddy. And he got this stern look on his face. And he said, Tim, there are 24 hours in the day. You need to learn to use more of them. You have 2 days to finish that book or I'm going to fail you. And he was dead serious. And if I failed, I would have had to take that class again, and I wouldn't, all that kind of stuff, He's right. I'll never forget that lesson. Everybody has the same number of hours. If you try to do too many things, you're going to water it down. You're not going to be good at anything. If you find your why and your passion and you devote your time, you're going to succeed. Okay? Tim, you've done that with your business here, getting it up off the ground with Random Breakfast. But I'm sure there will be moments where you're going to have to remind yourself of that why, because any new business is going to have hurdles, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think. You just hit it on the head. I actually talked to my team about the concept of I'm too busy, maybe like 3 weeks ago, and I was like, that's just an excuse. I'm like, what you really should tell me is it wasn't important. And that I'll believe you, because that's what you're telling me anyways, but you either don't know how to say it that way, or you don't realize that you're just not making it important.
Yep.
And yeah, so we've actually changed our mindset on that concept, just saying, hey, look, like it wasn't a priority, and that's okay. Like, that's an okay statement because it's just truthful, right? Like, because you did have time for it. You could have gone to bed an hour later or whatever, gotten up earlier. You could have made time for it or not watched a movie. But yeah, we just try and stay away from that I was too busy concept, because it's not accurate.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just an excuse, and it's somebody who's not wanting to take accountability. And, it goes back to, as a coach, again, it's my job to tell somebody that they aren't taking accountability. But I also have to try to point them in the right direction and give them a way out of that and get better at that and some kind of solution to their problem. Maybe a lot of times when people aren't getting their work done, they might be watered down and trying to do too many things. In trading, it's a simple problem. They're doing too many strategies and they haven't mastered anything yet. So they might need to reduce it down and simplify it. I think in business, it might just be that you're trying to implement too many ideas at the same time, and we need to focus on maybe one area that we fix, we get it out and running and implemented, and then you can move on to a new project. There's a lot of challenges out there, but I think it's always you're more likely to be successful if you focus and you get that thing completely done so that you can move on to something else. Oh goodness, Phil, I'm glad you set this one up. Tim, thank you for being here today. We're going to start to wrap this one up. Any final thoughts for our audience out there? Any future games you got in the pipeline that you want to kind of tease us about, or?
We have a couple games in ideation, and we're actually looking at doing something similar, but in with like a bootstrap mentality where you have to develop little businesses, kind of like a little lemonade stand game. That's something that I'd be super passionate about, and I think it'd be pretty fun. But we don't know. That's probably a year or two out. But yeah, I mean, we talked about a lot of stuff, and I think just trying something, getting out of your comfort zone. I'm actually a pretty introverted person myself, and every time I put myself out there, I give myself a goal. I'm going to talk to 5 people, and it's almost always, it's never been a bad thing. And so even if it's just an opportunity to learn something new, I think it's been a great experience, and I have a great network of people that have gotten me this far, so it's been fun.
Yeah, and I agree with all that. What a great conversation. Very much appreciated, my friend. It's always good to meet new people, smart people that are creative and out there trying to do something, especially, generating new businesses. Small business development in this country and new startups is not exactly an easy thing, and I think I haven't seen the numbers in a year or so, but I believe it's been going down for the first time in a long time. I think that we need people that are willing to go out there and create and start new businesses, because that's what made, the middle class of America grow. And I really think it's the spirit of that made our country really great. So congratulations on that. Good luck with Random Breakfast. And, we will catch on the podcast another time. Okay, Tim?
All right, sounds good. Thank you guys so much for having
everybody
me.
else out there, you can find us at tackletrading.com, getting the game over there. We have a rookie boot camp actually coming up on Thursday, August 6th, where we're going to introduce, some ideas of networking and new trading concepts. If you want to register for the rookie boot camp, you can find it on our Facebook page, Tackle Trading, our Twitter, Tackle Trading. We've been out there promoting it. That's Thursday, August 6th at 8:30 p.m. And get it in the game. We have a clubhouse over there. You can network with traders. We have all kinds of stuff for you guys to do, and especially that team and that community aspect that can help you. Right? Okay, we're out.
You've been listening to the Trading Justice Podcast. If you've enjoyed yourself and think that the conversations and topics we've covered are important, help spread the word. Give us your feedback. 5 stars on iTunes, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. The Trading Justice Podcast is proudly sponsored by TackleTrading.com. Get off the sidelines and get in the game.